welcome to card 2 of my Mother's Day series. I started off with a piece of watercolor paper, and then I'm using, this is a retired set from Stampin' Up! Called Fifth Avenue Floral. And yeah, like I said, it's retired, so it's really hard to come by. I'm going to link to a couple of different Hero Arts floral stamps in the supplies that are somewhat similar. But yeah, anyway, I inked up the stamp with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I masked the first stamped image and then stamped the rose again on either side of it. And I just make my masks with the Eclipse tape roll, and I always store it with the stamps. I just peel it up, and then with my wood mount stamps, I just stick it right on top of the stickers so that I don't have to cut a new mask every time. So once I've got that stamped onto the watercolor paper, I'm going to use my distress markers to watercolor them in. So I've chosen a bunch of different shades of pink and yellow. So I'm using Spun Sugar, Worn Lipstick, and Barn Door for the pinks, and then Scattered Straw, Mustard Seed, and Wild Honey for the yellows. And I'm starting with the middle flower and just using my watercolor brush and the lightest color of yellow, which is the Scattered Straw, and just laying that down and not being particular at all, just slapping the color on, really. It's watercoloring, you don't need to be super fabulous, you just need to get the color down, really. So once I've got the lightest yellow down, I'm going to move on and do the next flower because I want to let the yellow dry just a little bit. So I'm using the Spun Sugar, which is my lightest, and just laying that down on that flower. Again, super simple, and then doing the exact same thing with the third one. And the third one is getting like an even lighter wash because the water's been mixing with the marker ink, and that's fine. So once I've got that all down, I'm going to go on to the yellow one again and choosing my medium color, which is the Mustard Seed, and just kind of adding it to the inner portion of all the petals. And then doing the same thing with the pink ones, this time with the Worn Lipstick. So just kind of scribbling it on, not being too fancy with it. Now I'm going back and using the Wild Honey and just added that to all the inner parts. And then finally using, this is the Barn Door, which is my darkest, on the pink roses. I'm just kind of adding it, and if I feel it's too saturated, I just blend it out a little bit more. You can get the cardstock even wetter. Yeah, it just is what it is. It's kind of hard to explain when I just do it. I don't really think about it. So once I've kind of got it how I like it, just kind of deepening it, just give it a little bit of dimension. So there's some lighter areas and some darker areas. That's kind of what, you go for with that. I decided I wanted to just liven up the yellow one a little bit, so I actually took the watered down Barn Door color and just edged all of the yellow rose petals with that color, so they've got kind of like a pink tinge to them. And that's all there was to it for the roses. And then I just wanted to add a little bit of color around them. So I took the Tumbled Glass marker and I took a larger watercolor brush this time and dampened the cards, or the watercolor paper around the roses. I didn't get it wet right up to the roses because I didn't want the colors to bleed into each other. And then just picked up the Tumbled Glass, colored it, and until the color was completely off the brush, so it just fades to white. So again, nothing too fancy, really simple. The only thing with doing stuff like this is you just need to let the watercolor paper dry when you're done, because it takes a while because it's pretty saturated and wet. But yeah, keeping it pretty simple, just adding a little bit extra color, and that's all there was to it. So then once it's dry, I'm going to go on to making the actual card itself. So I'm using pattern paper from the, to my mind's eye, Miss Caroline Howdy Doody pack. And that's kind of what inspired the coloring, was all the yellow and pink roses on it. So I cut a piece for the card front, and then I matted it onto some black cardstock, cut a really, really thin mat for it. And then the piece of watercolor paper is taking up most of the card front, so I'm keeping everything fairly simple. I grabbed a sentiment from my All About Mom sentiment set, and then inked it up with the VersaFine ink, and then stamped onto the strip of pattern paper, just like so. I'm kind of going for a softer, elegant look with this card. So I had a kind of an idea in mind, but I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to execute it because I didn't want to completely cover the flowers because they're so large. So yeah, just kind of fiddling back and forth with different things. I grabbed another little sentiment from the stamp set and stamped it, and it was crooked, so I just redid it so I got it straight. This was just onto a strip of one of the little scrap pieces of paper. Just trimmed off the part I messed up. And again, just wasn't totally sure how I was going to execute all of this. And decided to cut the little strip into a little flag and just cut that with my scissors. And I liked how that looked, so then I trimmed it off just a little bit more. And then once I've got it kind of how I want it, I'm going to adhere the pieces down onto the watercolor paper, staying away from the left edge of them because I plan on actually sewing them to the card itself. And if you've got adhesive on that, you're really going to gum up your needle. So I kept the adhesive away from that. I just had them adhered down so that they'd stay in place. And then I've got a little Janome Sew Mini sewing machine. I've had it for years. And some heavy duty white thread. And yeah, just stuck it in there and sewed away. So super simple. Once I've got that, the little strips, the edge of them sewn, pull that out of the machine, trim everything off. And then to get the ends of the thread out from the front, you just pull on the piece that's on the back and it pulls it out. So I've got the threads on the back of the cardstock, and then just pull them to the side and then tape them down. And that just takes care of those. Trim off a little bit of excess, and then I've got the sentiment sewed on the way I want it. So I finally decided I wanted to add a little bit more black cardstock, like to mat the main image, just to give it a small border as well, just so it wasn't, gave it a little bit more definition from the busyness of the pattern paper. So I really like how that went. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to adhere that to the card front, just like so. And then I am going to adhere that to the card itself. And actually, before I get to that, I decided to add a couple little Kaiser pearls. This you could leave out so the card stays flat if you're mailing it, but I just liked the look of it. But yeah, you could totally leave off adding those and then you'd have a perfectly flat card for mailing. But once I've got that, adhere that to the card itself. And then I decided I had to add just a little bit of sparkle, but nothing too crazy, just to give it a little extra something. So I took some Fruit Punch stickles, which have that kind of like pinky yellow tint to them, and just very, very, very lightly kind of went in to all the dark areas and then like the edges of the petals on the yellow rose, and just added just a little bit of sparkle, nothing too crazy. So then for the inside of the card, just some more strips of pattern paper, and then I grabbed another sentiment from the All About Mom stamp set and stamped that onto another little strip of the yellow pattern paper. And then did the same thing, notched the edges with scissors to cut it into a little flag. And then it's just a matter of adhering everything on the inside. So a white piece for a place to write something on, and then I added that remaining little strip of the floral pattern paper. Got that into place, notched the edge of the yellow paper to match the front. And once I adhere that, I'm going to adhere this all to the inside of the card, and that's all there was to it. So yes, as always, there will be links to my blog post with links to the supplies used, some substitutions for the Fifth Avenue set since it's no longer available. Sorry about that. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!